This is City Pulse Newsmakers, a weekly look at the issues and the people behind them in Greater Lansing. Brought to you by City Pulse, Lansing's weekly alternative newspaper. And now, here's your host, City Pulse publisher, Burl Schwartz.
Good morning. Well, 2018 may seem like a long time away, but if you're running for governor, it really isn't. And the first person to officially stick up her hand is with us today. She's the former Democratic leader of the state Senate, Gretchen Whitmer. Gretchen, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Burl. Great to be with you.
So I've heard some interviews with you, and one of the things you're saying is somebody needs to level with the people of Michigan. What do you need to level with them about?
Well, you know, that is what I've been saying, and that is really how I feel. I believe that for too long, our leaders have failed us. They haven't been straight with us about the magnitude of the issues that we face. They've politicized our problems instead of trying to work to find solutions. And I think our leaders have tried to talk us into accepting lower standards and convincing us that we can't both have great schools and roads that get us safely where we need to be, safe communities, and investing in the next generation of Michigan leaders. And so, you know, I love the state of Michigan, Burl. I love the people of Michigan, and I've always believed you cannot claim to be a successful state unless you're a state of successful people. And I look at our rich history of leading on all these fronts and where we are in my kids' Michigan, and I know we deserve better, and I believe we can do better, and that's why I'm running for governor.
All right, so let's drill down on that and some of these issues. Infrastructure is a big one. What would you do?
Well, you know, when I was in the legislature, we worked hard to try to come up with a plan that really funded the roads. I mean, covered the whole bill that needs to be paid, and also did it in perpetuity. What we saw come out of the legislature in this last term, and because I think our governor has failed to show some strong leadership, is something that pulls money out of the general fund. That's never going to cover the $4 billion that we need in order to make our infrastructure sound and strong and reliable again. And on top of it, it's going to pit every single year roads against schools, roads against corrections, roads against everything else with a legislature that's term limited, and it's not a real solution in perpetuity. And so that's an example, I think, of leadership that hasn't really played straight with us and fought for a bold solution that really covers the problem.
Is a bold solution more taxes?
Well, I think that, you know, in a 22-month campaign, you can be sure that we will have planks and a vision that is going to come in a pretty regular pattern starting very soon, so that we can talk about what the vision looks like, where we go from here. And so I don't think anyone can say we can be leaders in education and we can be offer the greatest economic opportunity for everyone in the state unless we make that a priority and invest in ourselves. So certainly it will be a well-rounded plan, and I think you'll just have to wait and see some of those pieces come out when they do. One
of the biggest issues on people's minds in terms of how the Trump administration will affect state government is Medicaid. Mm-hmm. And now Governor Snyder he pushed for the expansion of Medicaid. He's arguing against eliminating the expansion. Get some points on that, but if they do eliminate it federally, what can we do?
I think that's a hard question to answer. You know, I worked with the governor on this particular issue when I was the leader in the legislature, and you know, I point to it with pride as one of those examples where I am willing to work with anyone who really wants to get to the table and solve problems. And the Medicaid expansion, Healthy Michigan, got 1 million more people health care than we had beforehand. We've all benefited from that. Our economy has benefited from that, I think, if you look at the studies. And so to see the push in D.C. against it, I'm hopeful that the governor is successful in protecting the work that we did do. And if he's not, I'm very concerned about a lot of people who are going to go back falling through the cracks, and what does that mean? So where do we go? I think there are a lot of turns that we aren't anticipating yet, and I think we're going to have to be vigilant about ensuring that that the people who are currently covered continue to have coverage, and that's not going to be easy. What does it look like at this juncture is hard to say because we don't know what is going to happen out of D.C., and I think that's maybe one of the most frustrating things of all is waiting to see what this Trump administration looks like and what the policy is going to mean to the real lives of Michigan people.
The state attorney general may, if you get the nomination, may well be your Republican opponent. He is certainly getting headlines regarding Flint. Do you think he's on the right track?
So the attorney general, my mother worked for Frank Kelly, and she was one of his top people. I remember when the attorney general's office was the consumer protection advocate. I believe in my heart of hearts that had Frank Kelly still been our attorney general when all this Flint water crisis began 1,000 days ago, he would have been in Flint advocating on behalf of people who were showing up with jugs of brown water. Visibly, we knew something was wrong almost 1,000 days ago. Here we are, people still cannot drink their water in Flint. And this current attorney general didn't do anything all those months. And now what they're doing is, going after criminal penalties against, a handful of people and spending millions. So you got the people in Flint who still can't drink their water, and yet their taxes are going to pay all these legal bills for something that hasn't had one iota of help to them and their daily plight of what do they do about water.
You're an attorney. You served as the interim Ingham County prosecutor. Is he on the right track, though, in what he is doing now? Should these people be charged criminally?
Well, if there was known wrongdoing, absolutely. Is that the case? I don't know. I don't have confidence that the charges they have brought and what the case they have, I don't have any confidence in that right now. So it's hard to speak to that.
Because why don't you have confidence?
Well, he's brought charges and he's made press statements and had press conferences and said more charges are coming, and what does that mean? What does that look like? At any given day, downtown Lansing, there are manslaughter charges coming against cabinet level people in the Snyder administration, and then they don't materialize. I mean, it's I have found in my interactions with this attorney general that they're not very forthcoming with information in terms of really us being able to understand if the charges that they're bringing are solving the problems that we're facing. But what I do know is that all the work and all the money they've spent hasn't improved one drop of water for the people in Flint. And I talked to a woman the other day. She called me after I announced, and she wanted to talk about Flint because she feels like there's not anyone that's really advocating for them. She used 58 bottles of water to make their Thanksgiving dinner for a family of 5. One meal in one day of the 1,000 days it's been since the water was switched. It's the daily burden on people in Flint is something that I feel like a lot of politicians have lost sight of when they put out their press releases or they file their legal motions. And that's who I'm thinking about. That's who I think about every time I turn on my tap. And here in East Lansing, how lucky I am. But how do they do it every single day? And why is it still no solution in sight?
I want to turn to politics. The last Democratic governor of Michigan had to govern with a Republican legislature. The Democrats just got beaten up. They actually thought they would make gains in the House and didn't. How effective can you be if you do end up as governor if you don't bring the legislature with you?
Well, I think that's where experience really matters. I served with 3 different governors during my time in the legislature. There was one that was more skilled than the other 2 at getting things accomplished, and it was John Engler. I didn't see eye to eye with him on his agenda, But I did respect that he knew how to build relationships with the term-limited legislature. He knew how to use the power of the executive office, and he had that background going in. Neither of his successors had any real experience on that front. And I think that's something that I bring to the table that is really going to be important. Michigan's not overwhelmingly Republican state, and we're not overwhelmingly Democratic state. We're a state that tends to go back and forth, and I believe that wants to see leaders come to the table around bold solutions and try to put together a vision that improves the lives for the majority of us. And that's not going to be easy with a different party in the legislature, but I think that the skills of having worked in and around state government for as long as I had the opportunity to are going to be very useful toward that
Now,
end.
of course, it would be better if you had a Democratic legislature for your purposes, but a lot of Democrats woke up on November 9th realizing that, wow, the Democrats in Michigan didn't have the right message. How will you affect a better message?
One of the observations that I've seen made by a number of people, and that I was concerned about during the election, was that when Bernie Sanders won Michigan and then Donald Trump won Michigan, you have to ask yourself, what are the lessons here? And I believe you cannot take anyone or any place for granted. You got to be on the ground. You've got to be talking to people and engaging with people, and ensuring that the platform that you're working toward reflects what the people of the voters want to see and need to see, the residents of that state. And I think that's why it's so important that I spend the next, it is a long campaign, but I spend my time in these 2 years getting around the state, listening to people, engaging with people. I think that that's absolutely critical, and you can't take anything for granted.
You caused a bit of a stir a few days ago with a message on your campaign website criticizing Betsy DeVos, who is probably going to be confirmed as the next Secretary of Education, of course, from the DeVos family in Western Michigan. Why did you do that?
Public education, I think, is something that's always been a passion of mine. I believe that education is the great equalizer, and that is one of the most fundamental things that we as a state need to get right. During my time in the legislature, I saw the DeVosses come in, descend on the Capitol, and blow up plans that were bipartisan, that were thought out to try to improve education opportunity for people across the state. In the city of Detroit, when you look at Detroit public schools and the unique struggles that they have there, especially with the unlimited and unregulated charter schools, for-profit charter school situation, deserts where some students don't even have a school, much less options to go to different schools, where they come in and they blow up a bipartisan plan because they don't like it, because they've in their minds it's hurting their charter school efforts. That hurts kids, and that infuriates me. That's not how policy should be debated. That's not, one family shouldn't dictate the quality of schools in the city of Detroit or anywhere else in this state, for that matter, in my respect, in my opinion. And so the thought that she's going to take what they've done in Michigan and replicate it for students across this country is really scary.
All right, we have to let it go there, unfortunately. A pleasure to see you again, and best of luck to you.
Happy New Year.
Thank you. Well, it's usually bad news when a sheriff goes to jail, but last Sunday night, Ingham County's brand new sheriff checked himself in voluntarily, and he's here with us today to tell us why he did it and what he learned. Scott Wrigglesworth, welcome to City Pulse.
Thanks, bro. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Well, were you just bored with Sunday Night Football, or what's the deal?
No, this was an idea actually I came up with a couple months ago, and the backstory is I kind of teased my undersheriff with, I've got this idea, not sure if you'll be on board, I'll fill you in later, but I think it's something I want to try once I come into office. So fast forward to about 3 weeks ago when I told Andy Bauk, my now undersheriff, the story. he goes, "You're never going to believe this." So he went rifling through his notes on things that he wanted to try, and he had on his notes, spend a night in jail. So when he said that, we were both thinking the same thing, but had never spoken about it. I knew it was the right thing to do. And kind of the thought behind it came from outside the Ingham County Sheriff's Office. We both came from ELPD. So we're a little short on the knowledge of the Corrections Division of the Sheriff's Office. So I thought no better way to learn than to live it, to eat, live, breathe, see, smell, hear all that goes on in the correction side, and it would give us a better perspective of why our deputies do what they do inside the jail, and from the inmates' perspective, what's important to them, and maybe they had some questions, and why can't we, and why don't we, or why do you guys do it this way? So I think it actually helped both sides kind of understand the process a little bit better.
And there's certainly a big difference between the East Lansing jail and the Ingham County jail.
There absolutely is. I think the count today was about 370, and I was just over at East Lansing, and they probably have 4 or 5 in their jail right now. One's a holding facility, one you can be sentenced to. So jail, in a nutshell, it's loud, it's rigid, it's got a lot of rules with it. If you follow the rules, you do just fine. If you don't follow the rules, there's consequences, just like there are when you're on the outside. We were in a smaller dorm, so we only had 6 other inmates with us, and I considered Andy the 7th and me the 8th inmate in the cell. We ate what they ate. We locked down when they locked down. We had quiet time. One of the things we did do is we brought the rules and regulations and the contracts from the sheriff's office into the jail with us, just paper. But when we were in our cells, we made use of our downtime by going over those documents that we need to learn as well. So
obviously, when you're the sheriff, and I presume the other inmates knew you were the sheriff and the undersheriff.
Yep, I told Andy right when we got in there that as soon as they're done doing whatever they were doing, playing a game of chess or watching a TV show, I want to tell them who we are and what we're doing and why we're doing it. I didn't want them to think that I was trying to get over on them, and I'm glad I did that, Burl, because 3 of the 7 other people that were in there at the time said, "We knew who you were. We've got TV in here, and we watched the election, and we knew you were the sheriff. We just weren't sure why you were coming into our dorm." And once I told them that, I think it put them at ease. We played chess together, we played spades together, we ate together, we learned a little bit about each other, watched the national championship game together Monday night, and we did the same stuff that they do each and every day. Age range was 64 years old all the way down to 18. Felons all the way down to misdemeanors. You name it, we ran the whole gambit, and we spent about 36 hours from 5 p.m. Sunday to 5 a.m. Tuesday morning with them. And there was no issues whatsoever, none.
How's the food?
The food is okay. It's jail food.
But what does it cost a day to feed an inmate?
I think it's about $1 a day,
No kidding.
something to that effect.
That's pretty efficient.
We
but
had
how filling can $1 a day be?
Well, it's nutritional. To say it has a ton of flavor wouldn't necessarily be true. I ate something called, at least the inmates called it cat head. I'd never had cat head before, but it was a kind of a rubbery-ish meatloaf. We had cereal in the morning, and they eat breakfast at 5 a.m., lunch at 10 a.m., and then dinner at 4 p.m., and that's due to so much movement with inmates back and forth to court, education, mental health, you name it. So the feeding times were a little bit different. They have a hot water cart in there that goes around the jail twice a day, so you have instant coffee. If you want a cup of coffee, you can make yourself an instant coffee. If you're a coffee drinker, and I am, and hot water's not coming around for another 5 or 6 hours, there is a way inside the organization that you can have coffee, and that is turn on the shower and get it as hot as it can go.
No
you fill up your cup, and then you put your instant coffee into your cup, and there's your coffee. Same thing with ramen noodles. You can have ramen noodles back there, and if the hot water cart's 4 hours away and you're hungry, you can make ramen noodles. It's just with lukewarm or warm water as opposed to hot. So
I have to ask, why do they call it cat head?
Well, because it's about the size of that.
I was afraid because it tasted like what somebody might think cat head would taste like.
Powdered milk they call smilk. Smilk stands for something like milk. So just stuff like that,
right.
That we kind of learned the inmate vernacular. And it was interesting towards the end of our stay, as we got released 5 a.m. Tuesday morning. I wished everybody good luck. We shook their hands, and I told them to stay out of here. Get out of here and stay out of here. This is no place to be. It's no place to raise a family. Every one of them promised me that this was the last time they were ever going to be in jail. And I said, now how many people have said that before, and every single person raised their hand.
I want to talk to you about the need for a new jail, but tell me if you tell me how this jail is. I mean, obviously, jail isn't meant to be pleasant. It's not a holiday.
You talking the jail
inn.
itself or the experience?
The jail
facility
itself, the facility.
The facility is old and it's falling apart. I think it's 53 years old, and I'll give you an example. We've got a couple jail posts closed right now, and we've taken parts out of the closed posts to fix parts that break into the open posts. We've got, as you can imagine, in a facility that size, there's plumbing issues all over inside the jail, and some of those areas you can't even get to or see until you see water coming out of them because they're behind brick walls and that kind of stuff. So it's an aged facility, and my stay in there just reinforced with me that it's really time that we get a more modern facility that doesn't have all the issues of a 53-year-old brick building that is problematic, to say the least.
Again, I understand that inmates aren't there for a vacation, but are they getting a fair deal with this old facility?
They are. I described it as rigid. There's a lot of rules. It's a tad bit uncomfortable, but it's fair. It's jail, like you talked about the food. The food's it's not like you're going to Texas Roadhouse or Outback Steakhouse, but it's food. It's nutritious. It fills you up. At night, I didn't happen to have a pillow for whatever reason, and so my pillow was my towel and my washcloth and 3 rolls of toilet paper. And when I got cold in the middle of the night, I had to take my blanket out of my pillowcase to cover me up, and so my pillow went from about this big to about that big. So it's loud. When we lock down, those doors slam, and at 4 a.m. you'll have an inmate worker come in and clean the day room, and they got to be buzzed in, and that door slams behind you, and lights get turned on in the middle of the night, so when they're doing cell checks, they can make sure that you're okay and you're breathing. And so all that stuff, it's very loud, it's very rigid, structured. There's rules, like I said. You follow them, you have no problems. If you don't follow them, then there's consequences. There's quiet times during the day. It depends on your classification of prisoner, but I described it as tolerable and fair. It's no place that I'd want to spend a week, 2 weeks. We had a guy in there that had been in there 15 months awaiting trial. Couldn't imagine being in that small of a day room. Our cell was, I think, 6.5 by 10. Not to be, I guess, gross, but when my bunkmate got up to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night, I mean, he's 2 feet. He's 2 feet from me. Yeah. I mean, that's just kind of how it's set up. You drink water from the sink you have in your cell, and
how secure is the jail?
It's extremely secure, and that was one of the takeaways I had from staying in there. That when they do cell checks, you have to get in your cell, and all the doors have to be locked before the deputy comes in and looks through the window to make sure everybody.
But now, you were in a dormitory?
I was.
But so there are cells, and then there are dormitories?
Correct. There are cells that typically you have a bunkmate with, and then there's you call it like a day room, where you have. It was similar to the size of this room, probably half the size of this room. Has a TV. It has 3 steel. Ours, at least, had 3 steel picnic tables, and that's
so you spend the day there, and then you go into your cell at
correct.
night.
Every hour you go in your cell. At night at 11 o'clock, you're locked in your cell till 5 a.m. in the morning, and then where we were at, they have quiet times both in the morning and the afternoon. So you're in your cell for 2.5, 3 hours. TV's off. You're doing whatever you're doing in your cell, and then you get let back out. From like 8 to 11, and then it's nighttime.
Let's talk a little more about the new jail. Where do things stand? Is progress even being made toward a new jail?
Well, I'm 12 days into my term as sheriff, and I think most of the county commissioners understand that there's a need for a new facility. The funding piece is the thing that they're still trying to work out. where the jail is going to be located and all the logistics of that. But I don't think there's anybody that would go through that jail and not leave a tour with the thought that we definitely need a new facility.
And there was talk in terms of $60 to $65 million. Is that, to your knowledge, where things still stand?
That's fairly close to the price tag. Price tag goes up significantly if the jail was to be in the city of Lansing. You'd have to buy property. We wouldn't be able to build off of the new kitchen that was about 10 years old, still fairly modern, that we could save. So all those, the politics of this process and of this new facility are still ongoing, but just had a meeting yesterday with our facilities director, both with the county and the guy that works at the sheriff's office himself, and it's just problem after problem after problem, temporary fix after temporary fix. And if you know anything about water, in pipes, water always wins. Grand Canyon is a perfect example of that. Water always wins, and we continue to have tons of water problems inside that facility.
Do you have a favorite location at this point for a new jail?
At this point, I would say the best place to do it would be Mason. It's going to be significantly cheaper, like I talked about the kitchen. It would be in the county seat, which the county seat is Mason in this county. So that would be, as it stands today, that would be my pick of a location for the jail.
I would assume an argument for putting it in Lansing, though, is that families of inmates would find it easier to get to them. Do you think that's true?
Well, I don't think that that's the main argument, bro. I think the bigger argument is transporting prisoners from Mason to Lansing back and forth to Veterans Memorial Courthouse. Our visitations in the jail are all via video. There are no one-on-one visits anymore, with family members anyways. Attorneys, some other people can do one-on-one visits, but as for families, we have video conferencing. We had one in our day room. You set up an account, you have a PIN, and then you schedule visits with family members. And the neat part about that is you could have a family member that lives in San Francisco, California, and you could visit, just like FaceTiming them. You could visit with them whenever you want to. There's a cost associated with it, of course. But yeah, the visiting part wouldn't be as big an argument as the transport part.
All right, very good. Well, unfortunately, we're out of time. It was great to meet you, Sheriff. Best of luck. You're barely into your first term, and we look forward to talking to you again.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Well, that's our show for today. We had promised you Jim McClurkin, a candidate for Lansing City Council, but he will be on next week. So please tune in then. We'll see you then. Have a great weekend.